Any questions for Africa and what she did?
Africa.
I think it was very nice.
Same thing.
Questions, issues?
What was the name of that piece?
What was the name of that?
It's a Sicilian.
It's by Bob.
Yeah.
Oh, that's, I can't remember.
It sounds familiar.
How did you decide it was
Actually, because the fact that the PA was kind of very relaxed. And, I don't know,
How did you decide? You finally heard it.
the other thing I do sometimes is say, well, I also sing. And singing is so phenomenal. And it's the same kind of breathing for singing as it is for dancing. So I'm breathing and I'm dancing and singing at the same time.
David, your message.
No, I was formulating a question, but let's wait and see.
Your question, though, hit kind of the nail on the head. These moments when everyone has to react and respond and gauge and everything, and the dancers have to gauge when is that next pulse coming. It's a little bit of a limbo that happens while everyone checks to see what page is coming on.
There was a tremendous amount that happened in about 6 hours.
Exactly. It's really hitting the nail on the head. And there's all kinds of cues and communication that happen without playing. I mean, there's eye contact, there's voice, I think, yeah, you really opened the place where that's kind of the key to this whole thing. But good. Bill is going to do the second side of the face. Just wait. Questions, comments on this? Okay.
Wait, Judy's in charge.
Thanks.
I just wanted to make an observation that I think underlying threes work really well.
Yes.
I think dancers love threes in general, and there's something about the underlying three that you did that was particularly musical and sustaining for them as they go through the performance. And I use that myself. I think it works really well.
Threes have, I didn't believe this as a musician, but dancers continually explained that threes are circular. And I began finally to understand what they meant. What do you mean when you say underlying?
Well, just the meter of the three.
The meter, yeah, okay.
And that's really a dancer's terminology. When not usually musicians refer to underlying, the dancers do.
Yes, always we're faced with this two sets of perspective.
You know, Doug, what I was going to say before, which is sort of interesting, is when in a plie combination, when you start out with grand plies, it always seems to me that dancers are a little bit resistant to take the full grand plie and all that. So that sort of affects the way you play and accompany it, you know. Whereas with demi plies, it always seems so natural. You're down and then up, right? But with grand plies, it's like, when do I actually start to go down? And how long do I want to hang out down there? And, you know, so it's just
It's a very good point.
Do you ever find that? I don't know.
I had never thought of it, but now
Yeah.
that you mentioned it, yeah, because the first thing to do you're right.
And then always if you say, well, this is a good tempo for a demi play, but then for a ground play, I always think, oh, I'm a little too slow for that right now.
Good point.
Yeah.
I found that too. Anyone else? What do you say?
Yeah, it's definitely like testing the water. Where you kind of go, is it one? Oh, I need to go in. And absolutely, it's like we need to first hear what is happening, even though we get the preparation. Or
It's another one of those moments where everyone has to gauge
Great.
But that's what the intro is about.
where we're going.
The intro gives the,
Right.
pianist gives the
Right.
tempo, and then
Yeah.
it's at that point that you can correct
right.
usually.
But it's, yeah. But I think the teacher too has to gauge, is everyone really ready to do around? Most experienced dancers are going to do their own,
Anyway.
They're going to do what they want to do.
Isn't that funny?
I'm just
Right.
curious because a lot of what we've talked about so far varies depending on what kind of ballet the teacher is teaching. Because I'm sure in Bogdanova it will be a bit different than both the Cecchetti or whatever. So what I'd like to know is what kind of ballet do you what school of ballet?
Probably a mix of very honest. Probably a little bit of Paganova, that teaches one. And probably a lot of, not quite as fast, but I come myself from, I work with sound machines, so I do a lot of faster work and actually, so, but I mean, I won't say it's exactly New York City Ballet style. I mean, it's a little bit mixed, adapted to every style. But it's definitely Russian style.
Andre,
Just the thing about tempo, because you said, well, about setting tempos and about getting the right feel for things. Some ballet teachers, and particularly this is true in schools that are predominantly modern, I sort of wanted to throw this out because this is what happens at my school. There, a couple of ballet people there are wonderfully trained and come from very strict backgrounds in a lot of ways. At the same time, because it's mostly modern focus, the ballet classes are the combinations are counted in as in a modern class. So you don't have a 4-bar intro in terms that you would for traditional ballet classes. So when we have guests that come in and say, they sort of look at me and go, the students are often thrown by this. And I wondered whether, I wanted to throw that out and see how people dealt with that, or, because what I've done is I've just started to change that in some ways and say, okay, you have to get used to being able to do this. But I keep running into both situations. One teacher will walk in and do 5, 6, 7, 8, and boom, then we start. And that really also changes the whole sense of the plie, because you've got, somebody actually just simply saying the counts. It depends on how they approach it. Are they musical in terms of the way that they say it, or are they used to the pianist setting it up for them? I don't know if anybody has any.
Well, some instructors ask for a 4 count for nothing, and some, for instance, like the R.A.D. school, just asks for maybe a 2 count.
Right.
Yeah. So 2, and that's it.
And some don't want it.
And then
Some don't want any, right?
Or sometimes in Bogdanova they just want 3 chords
Right.
or 2.
2 chords, yeah.
Right.
The introduction, we could spend the whole day actually talking. The introduction,
I mean, some teachers are very picky about this sometimes. I'm not that much because I believe that the dancer should be ready any time when the music starts. Because the music is what we dance on. Without music, there's no activity in the dance. So it's primary.
Isn't the fact of the preparation that we receive each exercise has to develop just to solve
Oh, absolutely.
this problem?
Absolutely. Don't make it here. Yeah, it's going to give you a hint of what is the tempo is going to be. So you just preparation for the arm.
But I think it's also a preparation for the musician
Absolutely.
as well.
My sense is that everyone needs to be on the same page. That's what it's for, to make sure we got 3 components that we're always mediating between a teacher, a musician, and dancers. And whatever gets us on the same page. I think what Andre described is it's a matter of somebody being used to one thing as opposed to another. And
Exactly.
as long as we can agree on one or the other, to me it never matters what they want to do. It serves the purpose of getting everybody on the same page. Some people think 4 counts is better because it gives everybody more time. Other people, in New York, a lot of classes, nobody wants to spend that much time.
No time for preparation.
Yeah.
Just go.
Wait Get out.
Everybody pick your own tempo, go.
How was the
I mean, there are people still drinking coffee during.
Right, exactly. Like double espresso.
How that's one thing, which is that observable difference between the two outside of what was. I think that Bill was played a little bit more within what I would call the pulse. Right. The pulse was the same, but he was stretching and pressing beats a little bit more than I think he was.
More square.
And he used, but still he came to the finish. Did you observe that?
Yeah.
Did you observe that
And the
difference?
dancer tuning itself, I think, was very square.
Right.
And the other one was more almost an improvisation. This is what how I was doing it.
How did you, I mean, but was there one you preferred or?
It's hard. I like both of them.
It's good. And I kind of stress that I think what usually happens depends on the level of the class that you're working with. If you're working with an advanced class or a company class, they can handle a more esoteric kind of thing, whereas than a class that is not quite that advanced, that depends on the squareness of, you know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, well, it wasn't a question, it was just an observation that, you know, there really was a physical difference in my perception. The two of you, and that no one was mentioning it, so I thought it.
Yeah, it's like both good points. I mean, it always has to be mediated three ways. There's always many ways to approach it, but it always has to be mediated through the three parties involved. And there's so many possibilities that fly what makes it terrible. Day in, day out, that there's always different ways to mediate the three ways. One more, and then we should move on.
You're right.
Good point. Let me even say this. I sometimes think of the whole bar as one long phrase, the whole bar. Because basically you begin sort of a journey, this three-way mediation thing. The play is the beginning of this hour and a half that these three of us are going to be, these three bodies are going to be mediating things and working together. I think the whole thing is sort of a super phrase, and the whole bar is one section of it. And the plie, you know, you might think of the whole thing as one phrase of some sort. And you don't want it to stop, that's for sure. I know there's lots of ways to look at that, but one idea to consider for sure. Yeah. This phrase, long phrases, generally work better. Anyone like to?
step, or did you want the one you moved or the one you talked?
The one I talked.
Again,
Which is
mediation.
what it is.
Yeah. It's always, yeah, problem comes up between, sometimes.
There's
The
sometimes.
problem comes up when you don't get the demonstration after it's
Right.
shown.
Yeah, good point, Rob. Yeah, I don't, she can show each, as long as he takes 5 seconds before, like he did, to turn to me and say, da, 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 as long as I can get it.
Sometimes it goes, sometimes it goes the other way around when you set a tempo. I mean, when you're talking to it, you don't even walk it through. Then you start moving, and you realize you've talked in the wrong place. I mean, not you, but I mean, sometimes it's happened.
Right.
So it seems to be more accurate when you move through it, because then you're feeling it, you know exactly how it's going to happen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, this is a problem I see parents get into often, where they talk without realizing that they didn't read physically. You know, again, it's always a three-way communication project. And it's like any communication, there's weak points that need to be readdressed. And with case by case, people tend to do one thing, at some point you realize this is happening, I have to address it. But I always say it's a three-way communication project. And of course, the dancers above all have to understand the coordination and be a part of it.
I mean, it was pretty clear, but then you have to ask the factors
Yeah, the more experience that everyone can bring to it. And as a communication project, also the more one encounters communication as sooner or later. Second time, anyone?
We don't need to be I think that we just go on.
Let's go on, yeah. Random. Anyone for what?
What's the next?
Oh, you want to see it first? No, fair. All right, let's put it this way. If anyone wants to play, just come on. Come on, guys. We'll have a few of them.
Nobody wants to play?
Otherwise, I'll play. Okay.
And 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, and 2, and 4, I should have to take 1, I should have to the left, 2, and 3, 4, and 5, 6, 7, 8, and 5, 7, 1, 7, 1, 7, and we just do 1 step. Clear? This is the preparation. Make sure that you have to be ready as the preparation goes in. What happens, I must say, from my point of view, from dancers, often the dancers get too comfortable in position and they sit there 5, 6, 7, and that's not happening.
Yes.
We have to be, this is why we have the preparation also. 5, 6, 7, 8, and especially for
Right.
in the beginning, you have to have it out by hand. So,
That's a good point, Seville. And also, I say, as another point of view, which is sometimes why it's just as well to go. Because sometimes for dancers who tend to get a little bit lazy and wait, suddenly their face, they hear these 3 sounds, and at least they get their attention and they know something happening. So both things can work. Depends on, again, three-way communication, what's going to reach them, what's going to work. Okay, I'll get them forward.
I'm just depending, if anyone wants to play to come up.
I just want to see one thing.
Okay. Just the very beginning from this one.
The very beginning?
Yeah. So, but again, what I was looking for was exactly where they started. They tried to set that up deep.
Did you pick it up on
Oh, they
something?
had a little band before.
Yes.
Yeah, always a tricky thing again, when they have to move before the meeting, I was a little unaware of it, but, yeah, ideally one might choose to help them or not. Dealer's choice.
Exactly.
And also, if you notice, I gave accent in, and then I reversed the accent. I went out, out, out. So the accent is...
Throw open to you as possibilities for pursuing. But one thing that sort of struck me is that the same things keep coming up over and over again.
That one, no. That's right. That's
We talk about the introductions and students not being prepared to start and not getting the idea that the music is actually starting before they begin moving, and different approaches of how to approach time, and the idea of how you take laughs and flossing or not floss. And I'm reminded of that great line of Willa Cather, where she said there are only two or three experiences, there are only two or three circumstances in the human experience, events in the human experience. There are only two or three events in the human experience, but they keep on happening as fiercely as they never happened in the first place. And I love that because it's amazing just to hear the same things over and over again, and yet you still keep approaching them as though they are brand new. Obviously, the key. So, at any rate, how shall we start this? One of the things that we thought about was we're just going to do a combination and open the floor and see how this goes and see what anybody would like to do and how they would like to do it. Please.
I'm going to jump around. I'm not going to give my regular class from beginning to end. I'm going to sort of jump through the class because otherwise we'll never get any further than off the floor. So just unlike doing the bar. So I'm going to do your best and be careful. Mark, you need to. Okay. Right, I'm going to show you that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. Good setting contact thing. Right? Around. Slide down and up. Oh, nice rock. Sorry. Do it again. Rock. 1, 2, 3, 4. Roll. Side, up, side, knees come together on the side. Swing forward and off, around. Well, actually, count audience musicians in this one.
At least grim faces.
I know.
What the hell is she doing? Oh, man. That's a tough crowd.
It is.
You know what, though, even if you just run on the downbeat, I think we all hear it.
Well, I asked him if I should count or not, because I thought if I don't count, then you have to figure out if I'm doing a 2 or 3. Sometimes I'm vague.
So I think that's also
So,
part of it. Like, I mean,
right.
people count, they don't count. And that's the thing about when you work with students and you're teaching them, they say, well, how did you know that was a 2 or how do you know that was a 3? You know.
They knew?
No, no, they didn't. I was just playing ball. 2 against 3.
Roll down, sit up. That's how it
So left.
So that's 7. Okay.
Okay, so how do you want to do this? Do you want to hear somebody play and go from here? Okay, who's going to play? Go. There we go. And then...
We have a couple of drums too.
Oh, he's going to use percussion. We'll do percussion and piano. John will play the piano.
No, I'll play both.
You want to do both?
I'm gonna do both.
You can go home.
I usually count in. I'll usually do and 5 and 6 and.
So let's do somebody else and then we'll go from there. John, we're sorry, John. Really, we really did want you. Yes. What? Oh, I don't want to play this morning. Alan, you want to play? Okay, Alan will play. This is great. See, I get to moderate and then listen, so I don't have to.
Same thing again?
Well, do we want to do the same thing? You can do the same thing about it is that one of the things that comes to mind, and Robin was talking about it in the back, was that when Doug Robin played, the thing that struck me was that I often talk, and I'm sure all of you do, to dancers about different sense of time, being in front of the beat, being behind the beat, being on the beat, and also the way people breathe and how they approach it, and how it's different. And we've got 3 or 4 different technique teachers that are extraordinarily musical in our department, and they all do everything completely different. And some are they're always in front of you, they're always on top of it, and that's more comfortable for me, for example. think a lot of it is also formal structure too. I mean, you end up playing classically, 4-bar forms, or you're playing Schubert, or you're playing Bach, or whatever, it works perfectly well. There's something about that, the way it sings, because of the nature of the disciplines growing up together. On the other hand, what I find is that the students respond, if I play a blues thing, or particularly if I'm playing froggy, I find reggae works incredibly well. And they immediately lock into what that style is about, and they loosen up. But if I go back to playing some Bach, then they get this thing happening. So, but at the same time, the teacher may turn around and say, "Have you lost your mind?"
Yeah.
I think also frequently ballet instructors, because of the way they were taught dance, when they were younger, and basically had classical music in their classes, propagate that as well, which I'm not saying is right or wrong. I think it's important that classical music be heard by students, especially. They really generally don't listen to very much of it. And it's a good idea that at least they have a familiarity with it. So, I mean, everyone's kind of skirted around the issue. Ballet instructors generally want classical music. What you just heard, those two examples, weren't classical music. Some ballet instructors would think that was not appropriate.
I think there's a deeper level to that, though, because I think the movement comes out of a body of movement that was done, choreographed to that 19th century music. So the music is very suited to the movement. And so I see it as an opportunity to play all that stuff that I love to play in piano lessons before I found out I was being, archaic.
Sometimes I imagine Chopin coming in like Louis XIV's original ballet.
Outstanding. It's really outstanding.
Sometimes it just depends on my mood. It depends on the mood of the class. Say, if I'm playing a ballet class, getting ready for a concert, or I'm doing my modern style. It just changes their perspective too. So you kind of have to read the class.
I would like to say I started playing ballet class on classical guitar. It was really very hard. And I would bring in Debbie Say, who was Louis XIV's court guitarist. I would bring in Debbie Say and play it, and it was completely inappropriate. I mean, the dancers had no idea how to relate it. They never really had listened to Debbie Say before. So, it's this point is really, I think, very interesting of Chopin showing up in Louis XIV's class, and Louis XIV going nuts and kicking him out.
The mention of Chopin is interesting because I find one technical thing that I do a lot more in ballet, very seldom in modern classes, rubato. I find that in a ballet class, rubato is a very, very desirable, very often called upon. I don't know if it's an age or whatever. Whereas in a modern class, I find that rhythm is very much straight, more driving, as a rule. I don't know if any of you other people find it.
I agree.
Do you think rubato encourages the use of ballet?
It encourages the breath in the
It
ballet
encourages
class.
breath, encourages a little more listening.
Yeah.
In a way, if I were to stretch out something a little more, then they have to know that I'm doing this, listen to it.
I think so many young dancers are coming up with automated rhythms in their head, at least in the popular dances that they do, that use of rubato in modern and ballet is probably a critical homeopathic benefit to the purpose of the drum sheet.
I suppose if you do a lot of research and some of the stuff, too, you'll find a lot of classical things that can be adapted to modern class. That sounds like, almost like the today music. If you go back, and you look at a lot of the Bach sheets and stuff like that, that would work just as well as, something that was 20th century.
Just hit the two in the floor.
Yeah.
And I want to say this is peculiar to my experience, which obviously you cannot generalize our experiences. I started out reading for ballet, then there was a period of years where I improvised for ballet, and then I found out my improvisations turned into my compositions for ballet in a classical vein. And now I'm back to completely reading classical music for ballet. And I don't improvise for ballet any longer, unless I'm put on the spot and the teacher looks at me and says, if I hear that goddamn waltz one more time. So,
Don't you hate it when they say that?
universal ballet phrase if I hear that goddamn wall.
So anyway, what I found then, just at least in the teachers that I'm working with now, and it's pretty steady, I find that because of the varied experience of the students and the various levels, that if I move into something that is less than the classical design for ballet, it shows itself immediately in their bodies in a non-classical ballet approach.
Right.
Movements in their torsos that should not be there, in the way they use their feet, even their turnout, their sense of weight, someone mentioned. So I've noticed the difference. So I've told the teacher, I said, you'll notice I stay pretty much with the classics because I've just noticed watching the class what happens. And she agreed with me. So for us, between myself and she, that's what I stay with, and she's very, very happy with that. Now, if another teacher said, don't worry about it, then that would be fine. But anyway, I approach it very classically because I've seen it in the bodies of the dancers myself, and I can.
But that can also be part of the whole pedagogical thing that we're all involved in, the approach that we're involved in. Because the thing is that if you're working with the right teacher, you can turn and say, okay, and that's what we ended up doing, where we will say, let's manipulate the situation with the music. Okay, watch this, watch this. So the teacher will walk up to me and say, okay, let's do the blues thing, let's do the reggae thing. Now let's go back to the, and we won't say anything to the students. We'll just look at that and we'll say, okay, and we'll have one half of the class watch the other. So there's that wonderful possibility of having that interactive relationship, which not everybody gets to do, but that's one possible solution.
I just had a point that I wanted to make, because she was talking about why isn't this music in ballet? I mean, to me, it seems like music is music, and whatever kind of mode and whatever kind of emotion and weight and lightness you want to get is going to be portrayed through that music, regardless of what kind of music it is. I mean, in ballet, I don't always see light, airy, fluffy things. It's like the modern ballet is not just composed of that anymore. It's not just.
But I think that's also what Alan was saying.
Right.
The combination of the traditions. I mean, they do have that relationship, and that's where everybody. And that's also what Gary's saying too. I think that's
So
where.
it's like, ballet, whether it's classical or modern music, I think it could be used in both ballet and modern dance. I mean, oftentimes I do see modern dance utilizing the classics, because they still have a certain weight.
I teach both ballet and modern, and when I was in New York, of course, I continued to take ballet classes. And I think that my feeling about music a lot of times comes down to whether you're teaching ballet for ballet dancers, people who are going to be classically trained and continue as professional ballet dancers who need a certain kind of muscular rhythm, or if you're teaching ballet to modern dancers, as a lot of the dancers are in college programs, where their sense of weight is different. A lot of them have a lot of trouble with just the simple combinations, the complexity of the turnout, where all that stuff is going on. And so my approach to them has a much more weighted, grounded level, so I can say to them, this is just like this in modern, but you want to feel this at the same time. I think that comes into play too. I don't know if the musicians see it that way, but I've always felt that as a dancer, because I've studied ballet since I was a small child, but I'm a modern dancer, and I kind of cross over from in the two planes.
Jan, if you want.
But the reality of the situation nowadays is that in 99% of U.S. ballet companies, the repertoire is so varied that the dancers have to have a different movement approach to a lot of different pieces. What I see a lot these days is that ballet dancers don't have a sense of weight, and they can develop that more. So I think possibly it would be a good idea to introduce it.
Shannon, what were you going to say? Shannon, you had a comment?
I wonder if playing to the tradition of ballet is a habit that may speak to the reason why we have so few modern ballet choreographers, and possibly to the lack of growth in ballet scores.
Well, yeah, it was interesting because listening to everybody play the ballet class, the harmonic language that everybody chose was really of a very particular kind of idiom, and that's actually a really interesting point. I was wondering, okay, is anybody going to really get very funky in this moment here? And the odds are, you don't know. I mean, we don't know. I mean, Sybil might just turn to us and say, please everyone clear the room, so that can happen.
And in fact, in the realm of music, the two modern examples that we heard are also very close compared to what there is available in the.
That's a great point too. And that being said, now that the dancers are completely warm, we can go from here. Yeah, it's an 8.
Actually, let's start at the second one. One set in second, one set in wide parallel, one set in first, and one set in narrow parallel. Now, one, two, up, forehead to the right, side up, 7, 8, side 1, 2, up, 3, 4, lift the string, 6, stretch, 7, 8, roll again, 2, 3, 4, plie, 6, stretch, 7, 8, rise up, lower the heels, plie, turn, roll, 5, 6, elevate, down. And you tell them, front, up, side, up, string, over the top, 4 counts down, plie, and stretch. Up, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Catch the right foot, stretch the left leg, and turn up, right, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Let's have somebody else play too. So.
Here you go. 5, 6, 7, 8, and
What was your response to that difference? Because there were so many different things happening on so many levels, and I don't want to.
It felt a little bit different. The second one felt more flowy, more relaxed. And the first one was more rhythmic to me.
Let me ask a leading question. One feel faster or slower?
The first one felt faster.
What was everybody else's take on that? The second one actually was faster.
But the first one, I think, was more ahead of the beat, as a general feeling.
Yeah, but also part of it was the harmonic language, which created that sense of anxiety, which is where Alan lives. But the harmonic rhythm was such exactly. But the thing with the second one was faster, which also was the point about that I was making in the first place about weirdness of hearing the tempo. So you guys, who felt that it was faster the first time, or who felt it was faster the first time? Who felt it was faster the second time? Samantha, what did you feel?
Well, I felt the first one was much more aggressive in terms of being on top of the beat,
Mm-hmm.
and the second one is more of what I would probably want at this point in class, because I'm working with that kind of quality.
But you didn't feel in terms of just the tempo, like
Well,
one being.
the first one really would have pushed me.
Wow. Was that, and what would be everybody else's take on that? Because I was going into, okay, we're at a completely different tempo with the second one, but it's just faster. But, you know, but the sense is different.
Tempo is one of the things that we're talking about.
Right, exactly, exactly. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
I could have done much faster or much change, but it depends on how I saw the beat. I could have made that feel a lot different using the same.
No, of course, of course. That was just what's interesting is that everyone's perceptions of it is fascinating. Suzanne, you want to do it?
One more time. Sure.
And what was that like for you guys?
I actually do that a lot when I have percussionists play for me the keyboard.
You
There's
said,
I
well,
sing.
that's good for you.
Because I fill in a lot of times, especially, you know, when we're playing a long combination and they just get the rhythm and especially if the accompanist doesn't have the ability to kind of mutate and go all over the place with it, I'll sing and I'll fill in.
Do they stop and sing with you occasionally?
No, it hasn't happened yet.
It will.
Because I found the response that the dancers have to that is really phenomenal. The way they just respond to the sound of a live voice.
You make them sing.
I did over the summer in a class I taught this summer. We would do like vocalization in certain parts of the phrases. And sometimes I encourage students to sing, especially if it's in ballet class, if it's music they know, or even in modern. I'll have them sing to make them breathe.
It kind of felt more like dancing than an exercise. Because of the
It's just something